So this is POISE, the Sexual Violence Support Group webinar series, and this is our last webinar evaluation or evaluate. So like I said, this is the last in our POISE series today, and if you are looking for the other webinars that we recorded on this topic, they are already available on our YouTube channel. But today, we're going to focus on how we can evaluate and assess our sexual violence support group. So here are our learning objectives for today. First, we're going to contextualize evaluations for our sexual violence support group. Then, we're going to explore different factors to include in support group evaluations before wrapping up today with reviewing the different types of tools to use for our evaluations. So, similar to what I do in a lot of different webinars, we're going to start today off by setting a foundation. We want to make sure that we understand evaluations, how they impact our programs, and the benefit of doing them for sexual violence support groups. But first, to make sure that we're grounded, we want to make sure we understand what a sexual violence support group is. A sexual violence support group is a group that focuses on social relationships, skill development, and healing for people who've experienced sexual violence. The difference between a sexual violence support group and what you might know as a therapeutic support group is that emphasis on building social skills and relationships. So these are places where people can come to build healthy connections with those who have similar experiences, learn ways to cope with what they experience, and heal from sexual violence. It's also one of those core services of sexual violence programs. And so we're really happy that we can be wrapping up the series today for you all to reference when you maybe want to refresh your own support groups or you're trying to start your sexual violence support group. And as we move through the rest of the webinar today, we will continue to refer back to the information of our mock support group. So this has been the same through the entire series. So if you're coming on today and you're wondering why we're spending so much time or talking about birds or older women, it's because we want to create, yes.
On my screen, one of the interpreters is frozen.
Yeah, I'll take
okay.
Well, you might not be able to see me in the channel.
I can see. You're good.
Okay, great. I'll take over.
Thank you all so much. And let me know if anything needs to change and we need to pause. That's perfectly fine. But if you're wondering why we keep coming back to older women and talking about birding when we're talking about sexual violence support groups, it's because for this series, we wanted to create a comprehensive story and narrative of different factors that might affect your support groups depending on who your target population is and who the target audience is for the support group. Now, in the evaluation stage, it's a little less important than it was in the outreach and the facilitation webinars, but what happened in the support group will still impact our evaluations. So what is an evaluation? An evaluation is the judgment or assessment of the amount, number, or value of something. Now, I know personally, when I hear the word evaluation, I tend to get more than a little nervous because my mind immediately goes to what did I do wrong, right? What is being assessed? What is being negatively assessed about me? But a good and quality evaluation should focus on that value piece. Evaluations, when done in a comprehensive and knowledge seeking way, can help our programs be more effective in our work, more efficient in our work with survivors, connect more with people in our communities, and more in tune with what survivors need. But why do we do evaluations? Well, there's this saying that says, those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. Evaluations are a coordinated way that we can review our past work, analyze what happened, and then apply those lessons for the future. Within that, evaluations are a way. Oh, and someone said something really amazing in the chat. I think if you don't evaluate before, you might even hurt people. Absolutely, right? And even if that's not our intention, the impact, which is what evaluation is measuring, like what actually happened, can be that we hurt someone, even unintentionally, right? And if we are not evaluating, we'll continue to hurt people and not know it because we are not in tune with the impact our actions are having. Thank you so much for bringing that up, right? And so, why do we do evaluations? We do them to gather feedback, to document what happened, to compare assumptions and our intent with realities. And we're going to revisit this idea a lot in this webinar today, right? Comparing what we thought would happen or what we wanted to do with the reality of what actually occurred as a result of our sexual violence support group. We want to make sure that we reflect on our successes, challenges, gaps, and opportunities. And we want to inform future planning and future work that we want to do. And for a lot of us, we know that some type of evaluation is needed as a part of our funding that we receive. So at their core, right, when we think about outside of our field, outside of our feelings, outside of the context of our work, evaluations are compiled data, impacts, and feedback, right? That is what they are, and those things are neutral. But often we struggle with getting evaluations or we want to avoid doing assessments. And I know for myself personally, the thought of having an annual performance review, right, which is an evaluation of how I am doing in my job, makes me feel a little bit queasy. And I don't think I'm alone in that. But now we are going to do a Mentimeter to kind of see where you all are in terms of evaluations. So if you all could, please go to www.menti.com. And then when you're prompted, type in the code 71826816. Or if you're a little bit more familiar with tech, you can point your smartphone at the QR code and it will take you to the same place. Keisha also has put the link to the Mentimeter in the chat if you're on your computer as well. And so I'll give you all a couple of seconds before I switch my screens over to the Mentimeter. Can everyone see my screen, which should now be showing the Mentimeter? Okay. So the question is, why do you think some people are comfortable with feedback? So some folks said it's hard to hear, they may be afraid of criticism, perfectionism. Criticism is difficult to hear. Depending on the delivery of the feedback and tone of voice can change if I'm uncomfortable or not. We take it personally. People fear they're being told that they're not doing their job correctly because they take it too personal. Yeah. And I think you all touched on a lot of things, right? Oh, we got another answer. Thank you so much. The reason is the receiver is impacted by the way he or she interprets the messages that are being delivered. Another reason is criticism and judgment. Mhm. Right. So you all brought up a lot of great things. There in our society in the United States, there is ideas about being perfect. And if you are perfect, then no one can correct you, nothing bad will happen to you, right? Because there's nothing wrong. Also, we are taught that criticism equates to punishment or negative consequences, right? And so no one wants to receive negative consequences. That is a natural feeling. We also know that the delivery of feedback can also impact how people receive feedback as well, right? So if I say, I think you did a really good job today, versus I think you did a really good job today. I said the exact same message, but my tone and my body language conveyed two different ideas. So those do impact the way that people receive feedback. And there's also this feeling about judgment, right? So if we feel like we are being judged, that can make people feel nervous and anxious. And oftentimes, feedback is not accompanied with support. So it again is just invoking feelings of shame and blame and wrongness in people instead of here's feedback and here's how we can fix it or here's how we can improve this what's happening. Okay. Everyone, please give me 1 second. We're going to make sure that our interpretation is working. It's important to us that everyone who wants to attend the webinar can attend in the way that they need. Okay. So our next question, and this one is a word cloud. So the more people say things, the bigger. So this question is, what are some assumptions we make about feedback? There's ulterior motives. They want we want people to succeed. Yeah, they care about me. Oh, those are good. Some other assumptions we make of feedback. Why do people give feedback? What are some of the things that we think? So we have people that people want to make that it will be negative. Yeah, it will be negative. I see he'll probably be a little bit bigger. Right? So when we hear feedback, we think that people might have ulterior motives, right? It'll be negative. Sometimes we might think they're giving it because they want us to succeed. They care about me, so they're giving us feedback. Yeah. Thank you all so much. So give me 1 second. I'm gonna switch my screens again back to the presentation. Oh, whistleblowing. Okay. Yeah, and that is feedback. Okay. Give me 1 second. Alrighty. And so I think, thank you all so much. Oh, feedback is a way to improve services. Absolutely. Thank you so much for saying that. We cannot make our services better if we keep doing the same thing, and we won't know that there needs to be changes unless we're getting some type of feedback, right? You all, I think, very much got what I was thinking as well, right? Many people don't like evaluations because they often lead to punishment, embarrassment, you can be demoted, or there's some type of negative consequence that we're either not aware of, or it's something that we don't have the power to address, or we're not sure how to change what's being brought up in the feedback. Sometimes people give feedback that can be unintentionally or intentionally hurtful as well. All of these things are valid, right? And they impact our ability to be able to receive feedback. And with that in mind, we still have to do evaluations because this is the only way we can determine where we can improve and where we're already excelling. Even our mistakes and growing points have value. So it's essential that these are discussed during evaluation, and there should be a mention of our overall strengths as well. Model evaluations are also reflective of our agency values, right? And so if we value as an agency the needs of survivors, honesty, and transparency, it will be reflected in our evaluations and the types of data we collect. If we value efficiency, innovation, and productivity, this will also be apparent in our evaluations and the types of evaluations we do. What and how we evaluate is a direct reflection of our values and our services. And so, if we value being funded, if we value having a positive reputation in the community, if we value having good collaborations with our partners, that will also show up in who, when, and how we evaluate things. If we really want our evaluations to just go beyond our grant reporting and what's required there, then we have to have a comprehensive view of whatever it is that we're trying to assess. We also really have to be grounded in the why we're evaluating, right? So if we're only doing evaluations in order to give people awards or to either punish them, right? Then people are only going to associate evaluations with rewards or being punished. So instead of doing evaluations and only viewing them as good or bad, we need to make it a regular practice that is grounded in wanting to do better and how we can make informed changes that need to happen. Evaluations are something that we have to do, right? That's what we want to make the switch in our mindset. It's not something that we have to do, it's something that we get to do in order to improve our programs. So now shifting gears a little bit, we're going to focus on some of the key things that we can do as an organization to get comfortable doing evaluations. So first, we can make it a regular and standard practice in our organizations. So it shouldn't be a surprise that we're going to be doing evaluations in our programs, and it doesn't always have to be a long and strenuous process. Evaluations in our programs can be formalized like annual performance reviews, but it can also come in conversations by giving feedback on projects, in this case, feedback on the support group, or even just something that you notice about your coworker is doing. The more we practice giving and receiving feedback, the better at it we will become. Now, when we're talking about evaluations, these can be casual, like I said, in conversation. Keisha, can I give you some feedback? I noticed that you have been really sticking to our cultural commitments lately. When you do this, that allows me to focus on my job and not worry about how our organizational culture is going to stop me from being able to do the work I needed to do, right? That I did not need to call Keisha into my office. We didn't need to have a long 30-minute discussion about what's going on, how she's doing, what she can do better. That was feedback. That is an evaluation of what she's doing in our organization. So, when we're doing formal evaluations, though, these do need to be in a set space. Those spaces need to be planned with enough time for the evaluator and the person being evaluated to prepare. They also need to be timely. And this means it needs to happen near enough to when the event or conduct happened so those involved remember and have time to process what happened. And they need to be informed. So everyone involved in the evaluation has an idea of what the conversation will be about. We don't want to spring any feedback on people because again, that when we talked about in the Mentimeter, that brings up those feelings of being judged or not wanting to be criticized because you feel like it's being used against you. And we don't want that. Again, the purpose of evaluating feedback for support groups is to improve the support group overall. When we're doing formal evaluations, it also needs to consist of direct and honest communication. So that feedback should stick to what happened and the impact that it had. And as much as possible, people should try to stay away from assumptions about other people's behavior. It should also focus on creating a shared understanding of what happened, including what worked, what didn't work, finding solutions to the issues that are presented. So, if possible, people should also have space to take accountability for mistakes or harm done, but that may not happen in one feedback session. And so, if our session is for feedback, we might need to have a different conversation about accountability at a different time. But the last piece is that we also want to make sure that any instructions or any direction given to correct or improve as a result of the feedback should be actionable and solutions oriented, right? So we can spend some time talking about what happened, what we wanted to happen, but we should spend the majority of our time in giving feedback or in doing evaluations on what the new solution should be. Now, in terms of support group, if we are giving and receiving feedback on in the group setting, this will help survivors model what it can look like as one example. So, in your support group, this might be one facilitator giving the other facilitator feedback on the support group process and inviting those the other participants in the group to also give feedback, right? So this is how we can demonstrate what it can look like in a healthy and respectful way. Now, more specifically, and what we can apply to support groups is how we can share the evaluations that we do. The actions that we take as a result of evaluations are sometimes even more important than doing the evaluation itself. So, in order to make those evaluations really stick, we have to integrate them into our work and into our support groups by analyzing and having after action reports created in teams, right? So even if Keisha and I are the facilitators, we should have a team who's helping us analyze what happened in the support group and creating a plan to correct and make things better for the support group. We also want to make sure that we're proactive with sharing the results with the key stakeholders. So for our bird watching support group, this again is going to be survivors. It's going to be those who are invested in the well-being of older women in our community, and then it's going to be community leaders as well. We also want to make sure that we're involving stakeholders in making changes. So after we do our analysis, we share what happened, we share what we want to do going forward. We should ask for feedback on that and, if possible, include them in any changes that we want to make in the future. So that could look like having older women who attended the group participate in the outreach for it the next time the group is going to happen, right? In what ways that they would like to be included, we should have an opportunity for them to do so. We also want to normalize internal changes as a supportive way to improve and not just as a way to punish, right? So, some of you might be familiar with the idea of a performance improvement plan. And oftentimes, sometimes I want to correct myself, sometimes those are offered without support, right? It's just saying, this is where you need improvement, this is how you need to improve. But if we really want to make sure that things are better, that everyone has the support that they need, these have to be done in a way that has opportunities to improve, support to do so, and a way to measure that success that needs to be had for the plan, right? It's not just something that a person is given on their own to try to improve. That's not helpful. And so I'll give an example of what a collaborative response could look like for a sexual violence support group. After reading an evaluation for a particularly emotionally charged session, a participant suggested that at the next group, the group open up with a reflection. The support group facilitators brought this back to the group, and the group decided that since there wasn't enough time, they could do a one-word reflection instead of a longer discussion, right? So this is a way of receiving feedback, bringing it back to the group, and involving them in the changes that need to be made. Again, wasn't a long, strenuous process, didn't have a PowerPoint or didn't have talking points. This is just a way to do it in real time. So with that in mind, I invite you all to review the evaluations that you do in your programs, but more specifically that you're doing in your support group. Using these questions, think about and look at and bring your evaluation and think about what story does this evaluation tell about our program? From this evaluation, what does it seem like we value? What isn't shown in this reflection of our support group? Like what values aren't being shown? How do our values regarding these groups within our work reflect in our values and what's missing from those different reflections? Along those same lines, who we value is also reflected in our evaluations, right? So that comes to the language that we're using, where and when we do our evaluations, who even conducts our evaluations. And these are all the outward demonstrations of what our program values. If we value funding, that will be evident in how, who, and why we evaluate. If we value community buy-in and support, that will influence our evaluations as well. And if we value our ability to be responsive and nimble and be efficient, that will also show up in our evaluations. And none of these things are more valuable than the other, right? All of them have some place in how we conduct our programs. But as I'll say over and over again in this webinar, what we value has to be balanced. And so this quote does a great job in summarizing kind of the makeup of this section. Assessment is today's means of modifying tomorrow's instruction. Evaluations are the way that we can help plan for a better future without having to relearn lessons over and over again. So now we're going to get into the metrics or the criteria that we can use to evaluate our support group. How are they chosen and what exactly are they measuring? Okay, so usually the question that people are asked or trying to answer and doing an evaluation is, was our support group successful? And sometimes people say or count it being successful because they held a sexual violence support group, right? Did we hold a group? Yes. That is what they qualify as being successful. But that's going to have to really be, if we really want to think about what success is, that's going to be very subjective. And even when we're measuring success with this vague of a metric or what you're measuring, that could be a lot of things that people might think of when they think of success. Success could be all of these different things, right? So, did survivors attend the group consistently? Did we start and end the group on time? Were people able to complete the evaluation? And was there a measured knowledge increase from survivors? In all of these different metrics, that could be and determine whether or not the group is successful. And I just listed some of the different metrics that I thought of on the slide that might impact whether we feel that the group was successful. This isn't all of them. But our definition of success for our support group has to be more defined and it's going to depend on what we're measuring. And that, as you all might know, is also called a metric. So these are some larger metrics that we can group, and the other metrics that were on the previous slide all kind of fall under these in measuring our success. The goals, the effort we put into the group, our plans for the group, and the impact that the group had. And so we're going to go through each of these, and some of the questions or guiding questions that we'll discuss, we can use to make evaluations or use as criteria for our evaluations. And beyond these four things, we always, always, always want to make sure that we're centering the needs of sexual violence survivors in the evaluations we do. Now, while these can serve as a goalpost for us, right? The goals, the efforts, the plans, and the impacts, the needs of survivors can also be an additional metric that we use to compare everything we do in the support group back to, right? So when we are doing our evaluation, how do they align with the needs of survivors? When we are when we're planning our sexual violence support group, how does that align in the plans that we have to the needs of survivors in our community? Everything that we're doing and everything we're evaluating needs to come back to that. And for this webinar, it needs to come back to what the needs of survivors are for our burning sexual violence support group. So we'll talk about this more a little bit later, but evaluating our goals, efforts, plans, and our impact is probably going to be a part of a more comprehensive assessment in this case. So typically, if we are doing an evaluation that includes all of these things, this will probably be a part of a longer assessment and analysis and not as a part of a survey. But some elements of each of these different metrics can be used in shorter evaluations, such as a survey. And so, one of the first things that we can evaluate is whether or not we met the goals that we established for our support group. And this is why we spent a whole webinar discussing the planning of our support group and reviewing our idea of what our work plan could be, right? It's going to be really hard to determine if we were successful and we met our goal if we're not sure what our goal was and what we were trying to achieve with our support group in the first place. And so that was a key part of what we went over in the planning webinar. If you haven't watched it, there's a lot of good information there in how to plan a support group. But this and having our goal as an evaluation metric will help us solidify our evaluation. And having that goal at the beginning of the process will help us determine and evaluate whether we met it at each step in our support group. So instead of us saying, well, we did these things and we did some other things, but they didn't really align with the goals that we had because we weren't sure what goals we had, we can say, we met our goal because our purpose was this, and we did that, and here's how we know that we met our goal. So again, not meeting our goals doesn't mean that that's the value of like whether the group was good or bad. What it means is that we did not meet our goal, and that's okay, right? There's not a value statement attached to that. We just didn't meet our goal. And that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that our group didn't have an impact on people. That doesn't mean that we didn't learn a lot of lessons. It just means that we did not meet the goal, right? So we want to separate the value of what it means not to meet our goal from just the evaluation that we did or did not meet it. And so these goals should be in response to what our work plan is, or just our plan for what the support for the process of our support group. They should be aligned with the goals that survivors had, and just overall what the purpose of the support group was, and did we fulfill that purpose? And so when we're thinking about our metrics, right, or our criteria in our evaluation, that can be, did we meet our goal? And how do we know that? Did we meet the goals that we established in our plans? And what contributed, prevent, or prevented us from meeting our goals? And how did it do so, right? So, in all the things that we're doing for our metrics, we want to ask questions about how. It's going to consistently come back to that, even if we're asking yes or no questions. Did we meet our goal? Yes or no? And how do we know that, right? And so, this is where we might talk about some of the things that happened, some of the feedback we were given, um, that can support the reason of how we know what we know. So here's an example of how goals as a metric could be within the context of our birding group. Our support group was overall very successful. We were able to meet most of our goals for the group, including providing consistent support to older women, holding the group consistently over 10 weeks, and decreasing the feelings of loneliness for the participants. We did go over budget, however, as we underestimated the costs we would spend on transportation and the amount we would need for supplies. Now, you can see that even in some of these answers for the questions, you can see that even in some of the responses, we can see some of the questions that might have been asked, right? So, for the first one, the question probably was the group successful? The next part was, how can you verify that, right? And here's our verification. We were able to meet some of our goals, and then we listed the goals. And we can see in this second blurb on the slide that some of the goals that we had were so the sub goals that we had were discussed and identified here. And then we also included in this evaluation where we were unsuccessful. And that in this case was going over our budget um, in two different places. So next up are another major category, right? So I am a person who loves to write things down. So if I were making my evaluation, this will be the next major category, right? Our plans. Did we follow the set plan that we had? And this overall is a yes or no question. And again, not attached to judgment. There's a lot of really valid reasons why we might deviate from this set plan that we had. Things happen that beyond our control, and that's fine. That's okay. But the reason for our evaluation is so we can document what happened and why, right? Not to say that someone is wrong or bad because they didn't follow the plan, just documenting what happened, why did it happen, and how can we plan differently for the future. But the key thing for planning um, is making sure that we know and acknowledge that plans will change. We want to make sure that we plan for the best, prepare for the worst, and expect changes to happen. And in order for us to use our plan as a metric or an evaluation criteria, we have to have a plan for it to be an effective measure. So if we don't have a plan for our support group, we did a little of this, we did things, we came up with the things as we went, and then we decided to do an evaluation afterwards. We can't use our plan as a measure of success. Did we follow our plan if we didn't have a plan? Another part of using our plan as a metric is that we have to be able to communicate when the plan changes and evaluate our ability to communicate effectively when those changes happen. Because planning can change or remain the same, because, right, like if we plan, the plan can stay the same or change as much as it needs to, but it really comes into how do we communicate those changes to those who needed to be informed, right? And that can impact our plans as well. So our metrics could be, did we follow the established plan? Why or why not? Where were the deviations from the plan and why did we deviate from the plan? And what happened as a result from deviating from the plan? And what in your planning can be replicated or adopted for the future? And what might need to change? Now, we want to make sure that when we're talking about what needs to change, then it's balanced, right? So we know that we're probably not going to be able to change our logo in 6 weeks, right? If that was one of the things that, if name recognition is, for example, is one of the things that needs to change, that's probably not going to happen in the next 6 weeks that we start our next group round for support groups. But it's good for us to document that fact. So when we're trying to make that justification later or explain why we did that, we have these solid examples to pull from. So here's another example of what our analysis could look like using work plans as a criteria for our evaluations. In 6 of the 8 areas for our work plan, we were able to meet and exceed our goals. While we were able to distribute all the mini flyers during our outreach, we didn't hand out half of the full sheet flyers we printed. Next time, we can plan to print half as many of those flyers. Even though we communicated to our supervisor that we went over budget on transportation, that wasn't communicated to our finance department. As a result, we weren't able to do the conclusion ceremony for the group as we had planned. So let's pay attention a little bit to this last statement on the slide. So in this example, if we had not put together in our analysis to show what happened, what the result of what happened was, and how that affected our overall process, then we probably wouldn't connect the change in our conclusion ceremony to what happened with transportation, right? And so that's important that we are able to track this. And that is, again, the purpose of doing an evaluation is to be able to put all the pieces together. The next thing that we want to evaluate is effort. And effort in this case is the assessment of the resources that went into the group. And this is going to be not just actual work, right? The things that we're doing, but time, money, tools, and materials. Everything that came together for the group, was it worth it? And this is how we use effort as a criteria, right? Particularly for effort and particularly for sexual violence support groups, it's really important for us to remember that, particularly in rural communities and in smaller communities, there is going to be a lot more effort put into the group on the front. And this is going to take a while to have your effort, see the fruits of your effort, because it's going to take a while for the community to trust you, for the word to spread about our services, and for survivors to feel comfortable with receiving services. So, if you're going to evaluate based on effort, we want to remember that sexual violence support groups and effort is going to have to be a long-term investment. So when we're thinking about our metrics, they are how much time or energy or planning went into the group overall. How much planning went into planning the sub activities and individual sessions. And in turn, was that effort worth it? Was that effort balanced by the impact that it had? How do we know? And where is the evidence of that? And again, I use the word balance and not equal because we might be putting in a lot of effort the first time we do a support group, right? Because we are compiling materials, we're calling vendors, we're trying to find venues. There's probably going to be a lot more effort the first time we do a support group. But as we start to replicate the process, it becomes easier. And because we took such good documentation, we know what we need to do, and we don't need to redo all of our efforts because we have that documentation. So an example, again, for our birding support group with effort as a criteria could look like, overall, we underestimated the effort required to facilitate a support group, at least initially. Next time, because we will have all the activities and discussions planned, the prep time should decrease. We also didn't account for the burnout facilitators would feel after preparing for each session and handling transportation after the group. That's why, after the 5th session, the facilitator swapped each week between cleaning up and transporting the attendees. So effort also allows us to compare where we spent our time in the support group. So we might have spent a lot of time in the planning stage, for example, not as much time in the outreach stage, and then about an equal amount of time in the planning and evaluation stage. That might look very different for your group and and how you planned your support group, and that's okay. But again, that's the point of evaluation is to know and analyze where we spent our effort, time, and our resources. Effort is also a way that we can demonstrate how our collective team has supported the work. So, a lot of times when we talk about who put effort into our support group, it really resides with the facilitators. And sometimes people might say the survivors, right? The survivors put effort into it. But when we are doing a time or effort analysis for our support group, we can see how our finance team uh, put in effort, right? We can see how our community partners might have put in effort. And so that's why it's so good to do a comprehensive analysis because we can see all the different places people were involved in the effort and not just who might have put in the most visible or the most amount. Then we have our impacts. So, what effect did the group actually have? Now, when we're talking about impact, and someone said that before, right? We shouldn't just focus on what our intention was instead and what we thought was going to happen. We want to think about what actually occurred, what was our intention, and how did those things differ. We also want to focus on the intended impacts, right? So these are things that we wanted to happen or what we assumed would happen. And we also want to focus on the unintended impacts as well and how they relate to the events that occurred during our support group process. And not just our process of actually facilitating the group, but in the planning stage and in the outreach stage and intakes from the beginning to the end. What were some of the intended things that we thought would happen and what actually happened, right, that we didn't plan for? Or some of those unintended consequences. And I've been seeing the word consequences a lot during this webinar, but when I say consequences, I'm using that as just something that happened, not necessarily something negative, just as a result. And so when we're thinking about what effects the group had on survivors in particular, even though this is the most important, we also want to recognize what were some of the impacts that were had on other key stakeholders as well. And so when we're thinking about our questions, these could be what impact did the support group have for um, adult protection service workers, right? So these are again are part of folks who are invested. What impact did this have on faith leaders in our community? What were the planned impacts and what were the unintended impacts? How did the actual impacts, also called the effects, align with the planned impact, what we projected or thought would happen, or what we assumed would happen? Right. And so making sure that we're measuring what actually happened to what we thought would happen it should also be a key part of our analysis. What could our program learn from the impacts that happen? Every time we're evaluating things, we don't want to get just stuck on like again on the what happened. We want to think about what we can learn and how we can improve it for the future. So some of you who attended the outreach webinar might remember this chart on the slide. But it's been updated a little bit since we were doing the outreach webinar. So I also just want to remind everyone of who the key stakeholders for our support group, again, the burning group that is targeting older adult women are. So those who are invested in the well-being of this target population and those who care about it as community leaders as well. But we added a fourth circle on this slide, and that is our programs. So we want to make sure that we include our programs as key stakeholders as well in this case, because we should also be evaluating our staff and our volunteers in our program evaluations for the support group. Now, the group that we should be receiving the most feedback from is survivors, right? survivors and their families. Those are who we're receiving the most feedback from. But less frequently, but maybe more extensively, we also need to make sure that we're getting and giving feedback to those who are invested and community leaders, because again, the point is to improve our sexual violence support group. And that can only happen if we are in regular communication and giving feedback to each other. And this is how impact might show up as an evaluation criteria as well. One of the unintended impacts we had was disrupting the relationship between an attendee and their grandchildren. As a result, we discussed adjusting the day the group was held for the next series of groups. While we were able to see a decrease in the loneliness felt by participants, there wasn't a significant increase in knowledge as we anticipated. We hope that these adjustments we made in the language and larger printouts will help us in the next round. So we want to make sure, and in this example, we talked about what happened, the adjustments that we made, and making sure that we're documenting those adjustments for future groups. And we also found a future sub-criterion or something else to evaluate based on the changes that we made. So the next time that we do the group, we might want to see if there was a change as a result and change in the knowledge increase as a result of large changes in languages and having larger print materials. We also want to just remind everyone that if at any point something happens in our process that we're not sure what the cause was or why it happened, that should also be part of our assessment, right? We don't need to try to make up a reason why it happened. We can add our educated guess, but if we don't know, we can just say, during the 4th week of the group, the building was closed where we held the group. When we asked for feedback from the venue why that happened, no one was able to give us a clear answer. And then last but not least, we have the needs of survivors. Now we know that a support group will be made up of very different personalities, backgrounds, and experiences. However, when we're doing our evaluations, we need to set a baseline set of questions that can gauge the collective and overall unifying needs of survivors within our group. Now, when we're trying to engage with survivors and their needs, it's easier to build a more relevant evaluation when we're consistently doing feedback with survivors. So, if the first time we do any type of evaluation with survivors is at the end of our support group, it's probably going to be a little more awkward than if we had been doing feedback regularly, both casually and formally throughout the group. So again, doesn't have to be a very 3-hour long conversation about how the support group is going. It could just be like, do you all like the activities we did today? How is the timing of the group? Does this work for you? What do you wish were going a little bit better? Those things are all informal, but they serve as providing a consistent feedback loop for the support group and having survivors informing how the group operates and how it can be relevant and more relevant to their needs. If we're doing any type of intensive or more strenuous evaluations that involve survivor input, we need to make sure that we are incentivizing them as much as possible for their expertise and for their feedback given. And this, I want to clarify, doesn't always have to be money. It can be college credits, it can be an award, it can be many other things, but we need to think creatively about what that could look like. But money is always a good place to start. And then, as much as possible, when survivors do give us feedback, we want to make sure that we are respecting that feedback. And we can do that by applying the feedback gave, thanking them for their feedback, acknowledging that feedback was given, following up, and following up about that feedback. And you will notice that on the slide, there are 2 red asterisks next to apply. That's because we know that we will not be able to apply all the feedback that's given to us from survivors. But as much as possible, we need to make sure that what can apply and what can change is, and if we're not able to communicate that out as well. So, our metrics for meeting survivors' needs. Overall, did the group meet the needs of survivors? Where did the group meet the needs? Where did they exceed the needs? Where did the group fall short? And how did we come to those different conclusions? And so we've identified evaluation criteria for each of those different areas, right? And typically, when we're doing them, if we want to use like those big 4 categories that we talked about, this would need to be in a more thorough evaluation assessment of our support group. But if you are wanting to do quicker a quicker evaluation and support group that you might want to do at every session, maybe in the form of a survey, we have created that for you all as well. So Keisha has put that in the chat, and that is available for you all to use as an evaluation and support group. Now, that was created very intentionally using some open-ended questions and short answer questions and scales to make sure that we're not overwhelming people with the amount of information we're asking for, but we're still able to provide a comprehensive assessment of what they meant by the scores that they gave. In particular, when we're doing assessments with in particular, when we're doing evaluations with survivors, we want to make sure that we're doing them consistently and frequently. So some key places to do them are before the group as an intake, right? An intake is an assessment. After each session, at the midway point, and after the group ends. Now, if you are doing a support group that's continuous, right? There's no end date. It's suggested that you do them quarterly, between quarterly and biannually for the support group, right? To make sure that we're still getting that feedback. So these are the actual steps in doing an evaluation. So you've identified your metrics and you're ready to go and you have the questions to ask. This is how we do it. And the examples that I go through, they're going to sound like very scientific because a lot of these steps fit into what the scientific method is. So our steps for our evaluation are to review the purpose or the goal. This might be our hypothesis. To collect our data, which might be running the experiment or doing the research. And in this case, this is actually doing a support group. We want to analyze our data and come up with our analysis. We want to come up with a new course of action or recommendations as a result of what we found in our analysis. And then we want to share out our results. Yeah, so someone said before and at the midway makes sense to me. That's going to depend on what your midpoint is, right? So some support groups are 10 or 8 sessions long, and that happens weekly. So that makes sense. But if you're doing a continuous support group or your whole curriculum is 30 weeks long, if you're waiting till the 15th session to do a support group, that may not work. So just make sure that you're considering how long is the group overall and then segmenting when you want some type of evaluation or feedback. Okay, and then we have when we're actually sharing out our analysis, what should we include in that? So if you remember from the last slide, some of these steps are on there, but it's going to be a little bit more in depth in what we share in our analysis. In doing so, we want to make sure that we are keeping our analysis bite-sized so people can absorb the information. So what research has shown is that people can usually take away up to 4 key points without being prompted by memory. So anything more than that kind of fades into the background. With that understanding, we want to make sure that we keep the information that we shared about 1 page front and back, right? That's the key information that we have. When it's relevant, we can use information and testimonials, right? Hearing directly from survivors. But We want to keep that information anonymous and the data that we shared as anonymous as possible as well. So when we're doing our analysis and sharing out what happened during our group, we want to review our purpose and our goal. And this should include assumptions that we made before actually doing the sexual violence support group. We want to outline what happened in the group and share any observations that we made. We want to collect our data and tell how we collected our data. We want to analyze that data and show how we made our analysis, share our results, right? So that's using a narrative or telling a story and facts to create that story, and revisit the assumptions made at the beginning. So we assumed that the winter would be the best time to do the support group. Well, because there's a lot of birds. There's a lot of birds. What we actually found is that this was not true. It made it really difficult to transport people, and so on and so forth, right? So we're revisiting those assumptions and comparing them to what actually happened, and then propose new courses of actions or what you're going to do in the future to change things for the better. Okay. So now we're going to finish today by talking about what tools can we actually do to do sexual violence support groups. So as a part of that, I want to ask you all to do this poll. The poll question is, what is the average length of time people will spend to complete an evaluation? Is it less than a minute, 1 to 4 minutes, 5 to 8 minutes, or 9 to 13 minutes? And so I'm going to pull the poll up now. Okay, maybe I'm not going to pull the poll up. That's okay. You all can answer the question in the chat. What is the average length of time people will spend to complete an evaluation? Or Kisa, can you start the poll? I forgot. Could you go to your control panel and click the poll option, please? Thank you. There you all go. Now you should be able to access it. What is the average length of time people will spend to complete an evaluation? All right, Keisha, I think you can stop now and then share the results if you would.
Can you all see the results?
If you could read them to me, I cannot see them.
Yep. So we have 1 out of 6 for less than 1 minute, 2 out of 6 for 1 to 4 minutes, 2 out of 6 for 5 to 8 minutes, and 1 out of 6 for 9 to 13 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much, Keisha. So the average time that people will actually spend doing evaluation, completing it, is 5 to 7 minutes, right? And so that is a pretty short length of time. And research has also shown that after 10 minutes is a very significant drop off of the people who will complete a survey, right? So when we're thinking about our evaluations, we want to think about what is the key information that we want to know and that people will be able to answer in 5 to 7 minutes. After that, and when we're thinking about that 5 to 7 minute mark, we don't want people to be rushing to answer the questions, right? But again, what is the most important thing that we want to know and what can be answered in that length of time? And that's why a mix of having those short and long answer questions is so important, because we can gather a lot of information with short answer questions, but we won't be able to understand or contextualize those answers without the narrative. All right. So here are some best practices for making evaluations. Like we talked about, particularly for survivors, we want to make sure that we're doing evaluations in every stage of our support group. They don't have to they don't have to be very intensive, but the more that we do them, and again, the more feedback we have, the better understanding that we can form for our support group. We also want to make sure that we're mixing the qualitative or the long open-ended questions with the quantitative, the data, the scales, the numbers feedback as much as possible. When we do this, this allows for people to share their true feelings, but also allows you to have solid data points to be able to compare to with the numbers. And so both of those things together help us to form a comprehensive analysis. This also makes us need to be more strategic about the location of our evaluations. So, in the past, I've seen people put evaluations on their website, and that can be really helpful if your website receives a lot of traffic. But if you put the evaluation at the bottom of your website or hidden, not on your homepage, or it's not updated ever, or the link isn't changed to make it look like something new, then it probably won't be as impactful if you get a lot of interaction when you're doing tabling events. Particularly for a sexual violence support group, it might work better to do your outreach for an evaluation by calling the people who are participating, by doing it at the end of the group, by sending out an email directly to the participants. But you all know your communities best, so pick the evaluation that will work best for you. We also want to incentivize feedback as possible and be mindful of how our target population likes to share and receive information. So, for example, in when we were talking about our metrics earlier, we noticed that there was lower knowledge retention because some of those materials weren't working for our target population. This will also and should impact how we evaluate things as well and what methods we use. So, if people in your community or your target population really resonate to sharing information verbally, then that is the type of way we should be providing our evaluations. If they are very social media motivated, that should be the way that we should be doing our evaluations and so on and so forth. And when we're doing our evaluations, we want to make sure that we're documenting what happened and the feedback that came out of it and not particular information about the respondent. So, again, confidentiality. We want to make sure that we're sharing the lessons of what came out of the evaluations and not who said it. We also want to be mindful of what's happened in previous evaluations that our organizations have done. We want to know and pay attention to what evaluations have been done in the past, who did the evaluation, what were they evaluating, where did they do the evaluation, why did they do the evaluation, and when did they do the evaluation. All of these different things can impact the overall success of having people to complete the evaluation. And then how they did the evaluation is what we're going to talk about a little bit more. We also want to keep in mind which evaluations had the largest quantity of feedback, the most targeted or applicable feedback, and most timely feedback. So there are three main types of evaluations that we can do for our support group, right? The first one that we're going to talk about is support groups. And these are focus groups. And these are interviews that answer a set list of questions that are done within a group of people. So some of the pros for doing a focus group, they allow us to gather information from multiple people at once and ask those follow-up questions that you wouldn't be able to over a survey. Participants can build on each other's answers and offer each other emotional support. And it allows you to ask follow-up questions and provide clarification in real time. Some of the cons for doing a focus group are that they're difficult to schedule, right? Trying to make find a time where multiple people can meet can be hard. They are more time consuming to analyze themes. So to try to find themes between verbal conversations is going to take a lot more time than calculating numbers. There can also be challenges in group dynamics as well. So, for example, one person in the focus group might really be sharing a lot about the experience and dominating the time. Or they might, someone else in the focus group might get really emotional. And so if you are doing a focus group, you might not be able to have one facilitator step out of the group because the point is to provide to get that analysis and not necessarily to provide emotional support. However, we are advocates. We need to always be prepared for that and build that into our support group, our focus group structure. This would also, if we're doing a focus group on top of a sexual violence support group, this could be an additional meeting for support group attendees. So my recommendation is that if you want to do a focus group as a part of your sexual violence support group, to add one more meeting in the beginning for that space. And if you want the feedback to be even more anonymous, have someone else that the participants are familiar with actually conduct the focus group. So, for example, if I were the facilitator, but I know that Keisha works in my organization in the housing department, I might have Keisha come in and do and facilitate the focus group, even though I was the group facilitator, so that that input can be more anonymous. And then particularly for focus groups, some type of compensation is suggested because these are usually more intensive and will take more time to complete. And here are some different examples that you all can use and copy and take and use when you want to do support groups with sexual violence survivors. So we phrase these questions particularly like this because it includes a mixture of short and long answer questions. And two, the questions are still open enough that they can expand when they want to or just say yes or no for some of these. We also try to ask questions that would be different than we would be able to ask or wouldn't make sense on a survey, right? So, for example, what drew you to the group? That might require a long answer that people may not feel motivated to write everything, but it's easier to communicate usually than it is for people to write. If you could go back, would you participate? Why or why not? Right? So there's a yes or no question and then an opportunity for them to expand. The next type of tool that we can use to evaluate is through interviews. So these are one-on-one discussions with people about a set list of questions. So similar to the focus groups, this is a way for us to get information from one person at one time, and you're able to ask follow-up questions in real time. It's also easier when you do an interview to only have to just a comfortable space for that one person, right? And there's an opportunity to build rapport. And when I say a comfortable space, I mean like a pace, so like you can stop and pause, and it's not going to interrupt anyone else's flow. And also an ability to be able to say, we can stop here and then we can come back and answer the questions at a later date. The cons of this one again are it can also be difficult to schedule. It's also harder to analyze themes of spoken communication, and there might be an increased pressure to answer each question, which is not present in a support group in a focus group because people can take turns answering the questions. Not everyone has to answer each one. And then the last type of evaluation that you might want to use, which often is the most popular, is a survey. A survey is a list of questions that people can use to garner specific data from a particular group or people. In this case, ours is for our sexual violence support group. The pros is that it's usually simpler to analyze. You can receive a lot of results at the same time by putting it online or having people fill it out in person and just use copies of the same questions. It's easier to distribute at a broader audience, and these can also be anonymous. The cons is that we are asked to do a lot of different surveys, and oftentimes people feel like even though they gave input, their their input from the survey is not applied, right? So that contributes to survey fatigue. It's also harder to gauge context from a survey, right? So again, tone is lost in this during a survey, and you're not able to provide context the same way you would if you were in person having a conversation or discussion. And so on the slide, there are two resources of different evaluations specifically for sexual violence support groups that are available. One is in the Power of Social Connection, and the other one is in the Circle of Hope. So if you are looking for sexual violence support group evaluations, there are two other resources available. And so overall, you might be wondering, okay, but which one should we choose? If possible, do a combination of all three, right? But we encourage you to invest in the one that works best for your needs. So if you do not have that much time to do an evaluation, then go ahead and consider doing a shorter survey. But if you have time, you have the ability to compensate people for your time to for their time to give their answers. You have time to schedule. You really want to be invested and include quotes in your analysis. Then consider doing focus groups and individual discussions with people. These interviews, each of them has their benefits, and again, when we gather information and data in multiple ways, that allows us to provide a more comprehensive analysis. So wrapping up today, I really want to hone in that the reason that we do evaluations is to make things better for survivors, right? This quote says, assessment precedes improvement. The only way that we're going to be able to be better and do better is if we are evaluating what we're doing. So with that ends our webinar for today. Are there any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any, but I will stay on for a couple more minutes. If you do have questions, my contact information is on the slide, and I really appreciate you all coming today. Please, if you missed the other parts of the series, please watch them. They are available on our YouTube channel, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.